What's up, guys? This is my modern homebrew deck, Immortal Bears, and it's kind of like a variant of the Dredgevine engine where you're just dumping cards into your graveyard. Except you're not looking for hasty creatures like Bloodghast or Gravecrawler. You're looking for multiple copies of Blood Artist and some type of sack outlet, whether it's Bloodthrone Vampire or Viscera Seer. And the way you win the game is most of the time you're going to cast it for 5, X being 2, and you're going to bring back all your 2-drop creatures back onto the battlefield. And so for each blood artist that's on the field, it creates a separate trigger. So say you have 2 blood artists on the field and a creature dies, that's 2 separate blood artist triggers. They lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. Another way to amplify that effect is Renegade Doppelganger. When it's in your graveyard and you bring it back with Immortal Servitude, you can have it enter as a copy of Blood Artist. So say you have 3 blood artists on the field, whenever a creature dies, it's 3 loss of life and you gain 3 life. Say you cast Immortal Servitude and you bring 8 creatures back. You have 3 Blood Artists and 1 sack outlet. So you sack the 4 whatever creatures, combination of these. And so each creature sacks for 3 loss of life and you gain 3 life. So when you sack those 4, that's 12 loss of life to your opponent. Then you sack one of the 3 Blood Artists, that's 3 more triggers. Sack one of the 2 remaining Blood Artists, that's 2 more triggers. And then you can sack the last one for 1 more trigger, which would do 18 loss of life in 1 turn. I run Vengevine in there just to kind of help with the early game to where you're not having to get as many creatures to start sacking and using the Blood Artist to win the game. Birds of Paradise, mana fixing and mana ramping to get into Immortal Servitude. Hedron Crab, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into a graveyard. So when you run the sack lands, that triggers for 6 cards. If you have multiple copies of Hedron Crab, that's even better because you get a lot of cards in your graveyard that way. Viscera Seer, I've used it before to like scry into Immortal Servitude, but its primary purpose is the sack outlet. Grizzly Salvage, mana fixing. You can look for a specific creature card, like a sideboarded card. You can also choose to just dump all 5 cards back into your graveyard. You don't have to pull a land or a creature, which helps in getting creatures into there. Blood Artist, right here, Blood Artist, creates the triggers, Bloodthrone, sack outlet. Run Dark Confidant, card draw, and then it's kind of a distraction. They're trying to get that off the field. Magus, draw 2 cards and discard 3 cards. It's kind of like a poor man's Faithless Looting, but you can do it each turn. It also helps you, put Vengevine back into the graveyard if it's in your hand. I run Snapcaster because if you dump enough cards, you could, potentially get all your Immortal Servitudes into your graveyard. So I run Snapcaster as a backup plan to snap into Noxious Revival. You can put Immortal Servitude back on top of your deck, or if you have this in your hand, you can just put Immortal Servitude back on top of your deck. Voice of Resurgence. Whenever it dies, you create a token. So I've used this in an aggressive way. You can get a big creature when you have more creatures on the field, or when you bring them all back, this is a 2-for-1 creature when it comes to Blood Artist triggers. And that's the deck in a nutshell.